And he realised that he was on very, very shaky ground. And the clue, one of the clues is that he sold a whole bunch of stock options very shortly before the event. Now, when I was with Schlumberger, we used to monitor people's activity on their stock options very closely, because you only give stock options to people who you want to keep in the company. People who have special skills or knowledge, or just you want to keep them there because you believe they have good potential. But what you know is that if somebody starts to sell their stock options, particularly a large chunk of stock options, you know that intellectually they've checked out. And it's a distinct possibility that certainly within 3 months they will probably resign. Well, not only did he sell 1.4 million worth of stock, he used 1.2 million of it to pay off the mortgage on his house. Which is another indicator that he had suspicions that his income stream was about to be interrupted in some way. So he was putting his personal affairs in order, in readiness for whatever it was that was going to transpire. Now, although he's no longer CEO, of course the first time BP has an American CEO now, but he's still on the payroll, but he was given 12 million to walk away from the position of CEO and to keep his mouth shut. Because that 12 million would have had some very, very significant strings attached to it. It would have effectively been a confidentiality agreement. Now, right now, he's still on the BP payroll. He's on special assignment in Siberia, which of course makes it rather difficult for him to turn up to any of the Gulf Coast hearings, should he have any desire to do so. So, not only has he sort of obviously walked away from the job, and he should hang his head in shame, but I mean, he's clearly sold his soul. I mean, absolutely sold his soul, because this guy should be called to the hearings and should be forced to basically share what he knows, or more importantly, what he doesn't know, because to a forensic inquisition, what he doesn't know would provide very, very significant clues to who might have actually been behind this. Another guy who gave me a clue is this guy. This is a guy called Lloyd. Now he's an archetypal socio-psychopath who believes he's doing God's work. How many socio-psychopaths do you know who are doing God's work? Yeah, well, ain't no God of mine, I tell you. And I mean, this is the front page of the Sunday Times magazine from almost exactly a year ago, when the financial meltdown was already on full swing. And this was, I think, about a 12-page spread trying to give Goldman Sachs a higher profile and talk them up. But this guy just comes across as a complete arsehole, basically. Anyway, as you can see, he was earning slightly more than Tony Hayward. Tony Hayward, on £4 million, was earning the average salary for a British CEO. Lloyd Blankfein, as the chief executive of Goldman Sachs, in 2007, nearly $70 million, just shy of 70 million in 2009. He had a bad year in 2008, about half that, when the meltdown was really starting to kick in. But here's the clue. Goldman Sachs sold 44% of their BP holding about 4 weeks before the Deepwater Horizon disaster. There was no way these guys would have sold that magnitude of stock unless they had an inkling that something of great significance was about to occur, which was going to hit the BP stock price. Now, at the time, I did know that BP had another well leak in the Western Gulf, but it was relatively minor. It's the sort of thing that happens from time to time. I'm not condoning it in any way, shape, or form. It's just a hazard, if you like, in the industry. But BP were dealing with it. I mean, all my inside information was that BP were dealing with it, and it should never have caused this kind of magnitude of exodus from BP stock. Now, whoever the fund manager is within Goldman Sachs would have undoubtedly had somebody at a very senior level in BP on the payroll. Because the fund manager, having responsibility for a fund of this size, I mean, 44% was 4 million stocks. That's at the time of trading, there was about £400 million worth of BP stock trading. So the fund manager would have had somebody at a very senior level in BP on his payroll, with the usual sort of backhander, making sure that if anything significant was going down, the fund manager would be the first to know. Well, you know, I'm not suggesting that the fund manager knew what was going to happen, but somebody tipped him off that it might be appropriate to start thinking about shedding a chunk of your BP stock. They'd have sold more than 50%, it might have attracted too much attention. And 44% is bad enough in its own right. So, you know, what we know, of course, is that at 9 o'clock on the 20th of April this year, basically the process started to turn the Gulf of Mexico into a dead zone. This artwork, this is obviously a mock-up, this artwork is by a guy called Dave Dees, who's a wonderful satirical artist. He's actually just been hounded out of Sweden. He was a US national, but he was living in Sweden. He'd been living in Sweden for 7 years, and literally just a few months ago, his life was made very difficult in Sweden. He's had to relocate elsewhere in Europe. But it hasn't stopped him putting his artwork out, and I do encourage you, go check his website out, deesillustration.com. Well, you won't see this in the Gulf for a number of reasons, not least because the Corexit, the dispersant that's been poured onto the oil, which not only breaks up the slick, so it increases the size of the footprint by an enormous magnitude, but it also pushes it under the surface of the water. So it basically takes the slick out of cosmetic view. Now, right from the outset, of course, BP were desperate to try and restrict the amount of photographic evidence available to the mainstream media, and that's why, you know, pretty much from the get-go, they were taking cameras and phones and basically anything else that could take a picture off of the guys when they were flying out to the rigs in the Gulf Coast. And as many of you will be aware, BP were employing private security all around the Gulf Coast area to keep film crews and news crews away from the beaches. And they were obviously paying the local law enforcement agencies as well, because the local law enforcement agencies were threatening news crews with imprisonment if they even tried to film. So consequently, the amount of photographic evidence that is available was pretty limited. I mean, we're actually finding now that of course the media is telling it's all over, it's all done, it's all dusted, it's all finished. But now that BP have effectively stood all the security crews down, now, of course, the information is starting to come out, although the mainstream media isn't printing it, at the order of magnitude of the disaster. I mean, Melanie Phillips made the observation in the Daily Mail in August, and she said, you know, it can't be that bad. I've only seen one photograph of a single bird covered in oil. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but you know, we know who payroll Melanie Phillips is on as well. And you know, although it's all supposedly done and dusted and it's all over, you've only got to go to the images section and Google Gulf of Mexico wildlife catastrophe, and you'll see you know, hundreds of pictures of the wildlife there. And unfortunately, you know, what is happening is, of course, the Corexit pushing the oil below the surface, and there's a number of reasons why supposedly they've done that. Not least is cosmetic, but it's also to push the viscosity below the level of the shipping, so that the oil doesn't get caught up in the propulsion systems of the ships coming into the Gulf, because 60% of all imports into the United States come in through the Gulf of Mexico. But here's a very short clip from just a few days ago.